And what we're going to talk about today is SAGE business cases. For those of you that are not familiar with this resource, SAGE business cases is essentially a database that contains business cases across a variety of different academic disciplines and subjects. The aim of the business cases is to connect theory with practice and application and showcase how different concepts in different disciplines can be applied in real life situations. Um, in general, business cases might be thought as a resource used by faculty members to engage students in a lively discussion. And while that is true, and what is also true is that students, for many of you, SAGE business cases can also be a very valuable and very useful resource in your independent study. So what I'm going to show you today is how you can navigate the resource to identify relevant business cases for your modules, and then discuss how you can incorporate them in your studies. It is important to remember that you have access to this resource through your A to Z database that you can access through your university's library site, but that is something that Rhiannon can also help you do if you're having any technical difficulties. So without further ado, I'm going to begin navigating through the platform and show you how you can utilize it. So what you can see in my screen right now is the homepage of the database. And the way that it is constructed is it is relatively straightforward, and it gives you a couple of different avenues in which you can begin identifying relevant business cases. The first thing that it is that you should do once you gain access to the database, which again you can do so through your A to Z database, but I'm also going to put the link for it in the chat, is to create a personal profile. While you can navigate the database without a personal profile, having a profile will allow you to save the business cases that you're working with, and it will also allow you to group the business cases that you work on in your own profile section. And perhaps the most important reason why you should have a personal profile is that once you have a profile, you can also cite the business cases instantaneously, whether it is in a Word document or in a reference manager that you're using if you're working on an assignment or on research. And having a personal profile allows you to cite your work without having to do that manually. So creating a profile is very important, and that can be done by going in the top right corner. Now, I am already currently logged in, but here, if you've never logged in the platform before, it will say my profile. You can click on it, create my profile, fill in your personal details, and in that way you will be set and you will have access to the thousands of business cases that are currently available on the platform. So that's the first thing to remember. Now, once you have completed that step, you can begin navigating the database. And as I said in the introduction of this session, SAGE business cases features a variety of business cases across many different academic disciplines and subjects. Some key features that are important to remember is that the business cases that you will find here have all gone through a double-blind peer-reviewed process, which means that they are academically rigorous, but also credible, which means that you can use them in your assignments and in your own research. Another two things to remember is that with SAGE business cases, we try to showcase the work of academics from a variety of different countries across the globe, which means that you can find business cases from different regions, which you can use in your own research. And finally, you'll also find business cases of a variety of different types and formats. You will find longer, more comprehensive business cases that you can use for your independent study or for your preparation for an interview. And alternatively, you will also find smaller business cases, more compact, that you can use in your research, but you can also just use to learn how you can apply different concepts into real life situations. Once you have arrived now on the homepage, there are a couple of different ways in which you can begin navigating and searching for relevant content. So one way is using the search bar that is at the top left corner of my screen, where you can input any keyword that pertains to your subject or your module, and that will give you a list of all of the business cases that feature that keyword. Well, that is a good approach. It can also lead to having thousands or hundreds of business cases, making it very difficult to parse through them and identify the cases that might be relevant for your subject. So what I generally recommend is to scroll down and in the browse by section, look at some of the available categories and subjects that are already available on the platform. So at the moment, you'll find business cases from 17 different academic disciplines. Some of these include standalone subjects that you and more broader categories such as accounting, finance, marketing, economics, organization studies, operations management, strategic management, etc. So those are broader subjects, broader modules. However, you'll also find a number of interdisciplinary disciplines, such as that of entrepreneurship, business ethics, and corporate social responsibility, diversity, equality, and inclusion, as well as research method for business and management. So the key difference of those subjects is that they are interdisciplinary, so they might apply to a variety of different subjects. Because, for example, business ethics, we have business ethics when we talk about accounting, when we talk about finance, and when we talk about marketing and human resources management. Next to the tab of the academic disciplines, you'll find the Sage Originals. In the Sage Originals, you'll find a number of case series. So those are business cases that have been grouped in very specific, around very specific subjects, so more niche topics. And these can be very useful when they are aligned to your research purpose and your research interests. So for example, under discipline, you'll find business cases in marketing, but here you'll find business cases grouped in more specific categories such as food marketing or global marketing. And so because these are more specific, these are more niche subjects, I would highly recommend having a look at them and see if any of them align with your interests, whether those are pertain to your research or doing an assignment, because that means that you can easily parse through them as there's fewer cases in this series. Here, you'll also find some series on social impact, sustainability, and women in leadership, which are, again, interdisciplinary subject and may have a broad application. So again, I would highly recommend seeing whether some of these case series align with the subjects that interest you. Moving on, you have a browse by section where you can filter for business cases based on the multimedia content that they feature. So whether those are cases with video, cases with data, cases with audio, so business cases in podcast format. Moving on, you're able to filter for business cases from a specific region. That can be very useful when your research is focused on a specific region. So if, for example, you're looking at your research focuses on competitive strategy for firms in Latin America or in a specific country within Latin America, you can filter for that specific country, and thus filtering out many of the results about companies that might not relate to your specific research purposes. And finally, we have a page with all of our content partners. So those are institutions across the world from which we commission business cases. And some of them are renowned for very specific subjects and topics. So as an example, one of our content partners is the International Council for Hospitality and Tourism. So if that is one of your areas of research, one of the areas that you want to go into, you can investigate what business cases we have from them. So that is also something to keep in mind. So that is a quick overview of the database of the platform. And what I'm going to show you next is how you can begin your search based on different topics. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about, one of the use cases of Sage Business Cases, is that of additional reading. So what we see a lot is for students, in your modules, you might not have the time to actually practice the skills that you learn. You might not have the time in your modules to apply the theory and the concepts that you learn in class into real life situations. So one of the ways in which you can use business cases is exactly for that, to practice and to learn how to apply different concepts into real life situations. So as an example, I'm going to look at the discipline of accounting. And whilst we look for relevant business cases, I'm also going to show you how you can filter your searches to make sure that you get fewer results. Because when you go into one of these disciplines, as you'll see, you have 403 different results. So the first thing to do is on the top of your screen, there's a button here that says Edit Search, which if you click on that, that allows you to add any keywords into your research. That's allowing you to narrow down the scope of your search. So if you are an undergraduate or postgraduate student pursuing accounting, a degree in accounting, and you want to practice in a specific area, such as that of financial ratios, you can input that into your search term. So financial ratios, click enter, and that will show you all of the business cases within the field of accounting that feature the keyword financial ratios. As my screen loads, I can show you an example on one of these business cases that I have already opened up. So if we were to go again in the discipline of accounting and we were to input the keyword financial ratios, we'll see all of the business cases featuring that keyword. And one case that I wanted to show you is that of Amtech Auto. So this is a case where you take the point of view of of an executive at the company, which is called Amtech Auto. And in this situation, you're given the financial statements of the company, and you have to evaluate a series of financial ratios that will let you know what is the financial viability of the company, but also will give you some information to forecast its future performance. The way that the business cases look like is you have the title, you have some information about the business case, and then first of all, you have the abstract. So a quick description of what the business case is about that introduces you to the topic. The majority of the business cases also come with learning outcomes that you can use to familiarize yourself with things that you will need to take out of this business case. The format of the business cases can vary. As we said, we have longer business cases, we have more concise business cases, but all of them begin with an introduction in a narrative form that will put you into that will immerse you into the situation that we're talking about. So here we're talking about an Indian automotive company. You get a brief description about the company, the industry where it works, and some information about the way that it is currently constructed. Scrolling down, you'll be presented with the data that you can use to calculate the variety of the financial ratios. So first of all, you get the balance sheet of the company. Again, you can download all of this in an Excel format, so you can work on them and practice with them on your own computer to see how you can manipulate data to get the results that you need. You'll also be presented with the income statement of the company. And also you will get some more information you'll also get some more information about the financial ratios that you need to calculate. The business case concludes with a series of discussion questions that you can use to begin practicing the concepts that you have learned in class and using the real life data that is presented in the case to try and work on your problem solving, but also your critical thinking skills. Now, if you work on a business case for practice, one thing that you can always do is explore the section of further reading, but also the references. And this can also be very useful if you're using a business case for your own research purposes. So if, for example, your research does focus on the automotive industry in the Indian market, you can use this section and to build out your research, to build out your bibliography. Going at the top of the business case, one of the things that it is, one of the benefits, as we said, of having a profile on the platform is that you can cite your own work very easily. So the way to do that is on the top right corner of my screen. You see that there is a citation button, which if you were to click on it, that will give you the option to format your citations. So depending on what format you are required to use, whether that is Harvard or MLA, you can choose the appropriate format. And then you can copy the citation and input it into the document that you're using to build out your research. Another option is that if you're using a reference manager, such as EndNote, or for example, when I was doing my postgraduate research, I was using Mendeley, you can export this citation into the reference manager, which makes it very easy to have all of your references in one place, and then use those and then copy those into the document that you're going to be submitting at the end for your subject. If there are any questions up to this point, please feel free to input them in the chat or to unmute yourselves. Otherwise, I'm just gonna go ahead and continue with the demonstration. So one of the things that we looked at is how you can use a business case for practice, and we also looked at how you can easily navigate through the platform. Another way in which you can use the Sage Business Cases platform is to prepare for interviews and to build your business acumen for your in anticipation and in preparation for your first jobs as you go into the career market. And one of the things that I wanted to show you is that there are very practical examples, very practical business cases that try and help you understand how to apply different concepts into real life situations. So for example, here, if I were to go into the discipline of marketing, I would find thousands of results. And then again, from this point, I can edit my search and I'm going to put a keyword. So if I want to learn more about Google Analytics and prepare for an interview where I might be asked something relating to Google Analytics, after I have inputted my keyword, I'm going to see all of the results, all of the business cases that feature that keyword. And then I can use the filters on the left-hand side to further narrow down the scope of my search. Here again, you can filter for your region, and then you can also filter for supplementary resources. But the case that I wanted to show you is that of Sosandar. So that is a case that focuses, that looks at how companies can use Google Analytics and different data pertaining to their marketing efforts to analyze the performance of their marketing, and then insofar to also analyze the future performance of the company and map out the competition. So again, all of these business cases are built have the same functionalities. The format, of course, might change, but the user experience should remain the same. You have the title of the business case, the author, the year of the publication, the DOI, which you might use for your citations. Then you have your abstract, your learning outcomes, and then you start building, and then the case starts unfolding. In this specific situation, we look at Sosandar, which is a UK-based e-commerce fashion brand. In this specific case, you have interviews by the person that actually launched the company that talk about their way of thinking, where they try to fit in the specific market, which can create a very immersive but also very engaging learning experience. And then as the case goes on, you learn about e-commerce trends, you learn about the target market of the specific company, about its competition. You learn things like such as consumer behavior, the plans of the future for the company. And then again, you have the discussion questions, which you can use to try and apply the things that have been discussed in the case, but also to try and apply the concepts that you have learned in class. And in this way, you can begin building your confidence, but also building your technical expertise that you might want to showcase in an interview or in your first job. So you can also, of course, use Sage business cases to prepare for your career. One thing that it is important to note is, again, we have the citations, but of course you also have a number of other functionalities that you can use to share a business case with others. So with your if you work on a business case in a group for a group project, or you want to share a business case with your friends that might also want to go into the same career, you can do that by copying the links to any of these, by copying the link to this business case and instantaneously sharing it with others. So far we have looked at how you can use a business case as additional reading to learn how to apply different concepts into real life situations. We looked at a business case that you can use to prepare for an interview, to prepare for your first job, so in a field such as marketing. And the third use case that we see with Sage business case is to use it for your own research purposes. So when you do your research, you might want to use some of the business cases into the argument that you are going to develop. In your essay, you might want to use one of the business cases as context in the introduction of your research. And here, one of the examples that I wanted to show you is a business case which looks at financial bubbles and the stock market in the UK in the 1840s. That is, for example, that can be a business case that you can use to set the context of your own research. If you're doing research in, for example, the stock markets, and you look at financial accounting and you look at how investors behave. So this is just another example of a business case. Again, you have your learning outcomes, the introduction, the background information. And as we said, as I showed for the first business case, one of the things that you can always use that can be very helpful for research is your further reading. So you can use these resources to build out your bibliography. So even if this business case per se, you cannot be used in your research, you can explore the further reading and find some relevant articles that you could potentially incorporate in your research. And finally, you have the references. One thing that it is also important to note is that if you are using Sage business cases to build out your research and you're using more than one business case, you have this feature on the top right corner, which is the add to list feature, where you can save a business case into your profile. So once you have created a profile, you can incorporate a number of business cases into one list, and in this way keep track of all of the business cases that you're using for your research. As we're running almost out of time, I wanted to quickly summarize the things that we've talked about, and also tell you how you can ask for help when it comes to Sage and business cases. So Sage business cases is a database that contains a variety of business cases across multiple academic disciplines and subjects. You can gain access to this database through the links that Rhiannon and I have inserted in the chat. The easiest way to do that is through your A to Z database. And once you enter the database, the first thing to do is to create a personal profile that will allow you to save business cases, share them, but also cite them instantaneously. Once you arrive at the homepage of the platform, you can use the search bar on the top left corner, where you can input any keyword and that will show you all of the relevant business cases. But you can also use the different sections of the browse by section, where you can begin your search looking at a specific academic discipline. You can look at one of our case series that look at more specific subjects. You can begin your search by looking at a specific region, or even some of our content partners. And the most important thing that I think, the most important thing to take away from this session is that you can use this platform in a variety of different ways. And specifically, there are three use cases that I generally recommend. So the first use case is to use the business cases to see how you can apply the concepts and the theory that you learn in class into real life situations. In this way, you can build your confidence in anticipation of your exams, but you can also build the technical expertise that you're going to need in your careers later on. Apart from additional reading, you can always use the Sage business cases in your research. So when you're building out your research, when you want to learn more about the topic, you can use the business cases themselves, but you can also consult the further reading that consists of various academic resources and academic studies that you can use to build out your bibliography. And finally, you can use the business cases for interview preparation, to see how you can to learn about how companies apply different concepts, and in this way build your confidence when you have to talk to an interviewer and convince them that you're ready for your first or your second job. So those are the things to remember and take away from this session.